Her barefoot journey, from poverty to success, how a CEO shockingly hired the girl with no shoes. It was a hot summer day in a small town where opportunity often felt like a mirage. Cars zipped by on dusty roads as the sun blazed overhead, but in a crowded marketplace filled with the scent of fresh produce and spices, one girl was drawing all the eyes. She was barefoot, with dirty feet that told a harrowing story of struggle, yet her presence was captivating. People whispered, not out of pity, but in awe. Who was she? How did she manage to wear a smile that painted over her grim situation? Her name was Lila, and her laughter sparkled like diamonds amidst a sea of despair. It wasn't just her missing shoes that set her apart, it was the twinkle in her eye, the determined set of her jaw. She darted from stall to stall, body alive with energy, carrying crates of fruit taller than her small frame. "Look at her go," an old woman in a floral dress remarked, shaking her head in disbelief. "Someone should rescue that girl." But Lila seemed to thrive in the chaos, moving with an agility that felt almost supernatural. Was she more than just a girl from the streets? Yet, what fascinated people most was the hushed rumors swirling around her, thick as the heat. Stories claimed she had a knack for finding lost things, like a cat that always returned home, no matter the distance. A man on the corner, his scruffy beard flecked with gray, raised an eyebrow. "I heard she found the mayor's missing cat last week. That feline's been gone for a month." Others nodded, eyes wide with intrigue. Perhaps she was special, a protector in a world so often harsh and unyielding. Just then, the atmosphere shifted. An elegant car pulled up, gleaming like a beacon against the backdrop of faded buildings. People froze, whispers silenced. The door swung open, revealing a striking woman in a tailored suit, the CEO of the town's largest tech company. What was she doing here, in this forgotten corner of the world? Lila stilled, sensing the electric vibe in the air. Was she about to change the course of Lila's life forever, or was this just another fleeting moment destined to pass by? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash the like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the crowd held its breath, Lila stood frozen, the strange woman calling her name. "Lila! Come here, please." The excitement sent shocks of adrenaline through her small body. Heads turned, eyes widened. Did she dare approach? Would this moment transform her life, or bring more heartache? She took a tentative step forward, heart pounding in her chest. But before she could reach the car, a sudden crash echoed from the other side of the street. A huge truck careened around the corner, tires screeching, headed straight towards the crowd. Gasps erupted, people scattered. Lila's breath caught in her throat. What would happen next? Time seemed to hang suspended as Lila's world erupted into chaos. The truck barreled forward, its horn blaring a shrill cry that cut through the murmur of panic. Her heart raced like a wild drum, the frantic sounds mixing with the shouts of onlookers as they scrambled for safety. Lila froze, torn between instinct and sheer disbelief. "Move," someone screamed, shoving past her, but the ground felt like quicksand beneath her feet. The elegant woman in the suit was still there, the CEO was watching, her expression shifting from excitement to horror in a mere heartbeat. A surge of adrenaline ignited within Lila as instinct took over. She pushed herself into action, eyes narrowing on the path toward the approaching danger. It was instinct that propelled her, a deep-rooted desire to protect those around her, sparking a strength she didn't know she possessed. Before she even had time to think, she sprinted towards the nearest group of children playing a few yards off. "Get out of the way," she called, her voice cutting through the bedlam. The children glanced up, frightened by her urgent tone, but hesitated. They didn't understand the looming threat. The truck careened closer, its driver clearly panicking. Lila's heart raced as she reached the kids just in time, grabbing one small boy by the collar and yanking him backward. They stumbled to safety, falling on the grass just as the truck swerved past, skidding dangerously close to where they had been playing moments before. Chaos still swirled around her, bodies colliding as the crowd scattered like a flock of startled birds. But in that moment, she felt something shift inside her, a sense of purpose that fired her spirit. As she looked back toward the truck, the anxiety in her chest tightened. Would anyone else get hurt? Would the driver have control? Lila turned to look at the CEO again. She was standing still now, eyes wide, mouth slightly agape. Recognition flickered across the woman's face. Something deeper than simple shock. Was it admiration or realization? Just then, the truck finally skidded to a halt, metal screeching as it came to rest. The driver, a middle-aged man, leaped out, trembling with fear and disbelief, staring at the destruction left behind. The crowd started to gather back together, whispers of amazement drowning out the earlier panic. "Did you see that girl?" Someone gasped, and Lila's name began to ripple through the air. She could hear it, echoing, morphing into a fervent chant, her heroism blowing like a breeze through the marketplace. But just as the atmosphere began to shift from fright to awe, something unexpected happened. A couple of men, rough-looking and tense, appeared from the back of the truck. They were shouting angrily, a stark contrast to the cheer of the crowd. And then, with alarming speed, one of them lunged toward Lila. In an instant, everything she had known, everything she had fought for, hung in the balance. The glimmer of hope and success she had seen in the CEO's eyes now felt like a distant dream, wavering beneath the shadow of danger. What were they planning? Lila stood tall, heart thumping wildly in her chest, determination blazing in her eyes. What was this twist of fate, and could she stand strong once more? The man came at Lila like a freight train, his intentions dark and unclear. She barely had a moment to process before she sidestepped, adrenaline spiking through her veins. He stumbled, his angry shout morphing into a curse as he lost his balance. She turned, her mind racing. "Get back!" She yelled, her voice cracking, but he was too close. The crowd behind her gasped, eyes wide, as if they were standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting for the fall. The second man remained at the truck's rear, scanning the crowd with a wild look in his eyes, his presence like a storm cloud looming over them. Lila couldn't let fear paralyze her now. She had acted once to save someone. Could she do it again? The first man regained his footing and charged again. He didn't care for the witnesses, the screams, or the growing murmurs around them. All he saw was her. Lila's heart raced as she braced herself. She knew she had to protect those children, the onlookers, herself. "You don't want this," she shouted, hoping that maybe her words could cut through his rage. "Just stop." The tension snapped. A flicker of doubt crossed his features, but it was quickly replaced by fury. His fists clenched as if they were the hammers that would bring the walls crashing down. In that heartbeat, she spotted a piece of debris on the ground, sharp-edged and sturdy. Without thinking, she dove for it, her fingers wrapping around the makeshift weapon. It felt foreign in her grasp, yet it carried the weight of desperation. As she straightened up, the man rushed forward, but she was ready. With a swift motion, she brandished the object, holding it out like a shield. The crowd held its breath, the air thick with tension. "Stop!" she called again, this time with a steadiness she didn't know she possessed. Behind her, the murmurs of the crowd turned to whispers of confusion and fear. Some people even stepped back, unwilling to be drawn into whatever confrontation was brewing. The man hesitated, an unsteady flicker in his eyes. That tiny pause felt like a lifetime. "You think you're tough?" He spat, but she saw a crack in his bravado. In that moment of hesitation, she realized something deep inside. "I'm not trying to be tough. I just want you to leave. Just walk away and let this go." Maybe her voice would break through, maybe it wouldn't. The uncertainty raged within her. Behind him, the second man spoke up, his voice gruff, urging, "Let us just get what we came for." They were serious, toxic intentions swirling between them, and it was catching like wildfire. The first man turned, uncertainty battling his aggression. Lila shifted slightly, eyes wide, ready for any signs of danger. The crowd strained, waiting for an explosion. She could feel the weight of their gazes mixed with fear, admiration, confusion. They were unsure if she was ready to be a hero or if she would falter. She clenched the debris in her hand, the harsh grip keeping her grounded. But then, just as things seemed to settle, the CEO stepped forward from the back of the crowd, the other spectators parting like waves around her. She approached with a slow, deliberate pace. "What's your plan? You think violence solves everything?" The thunder of the 2 minutes tension bounced off her words, thickening the air. Lila's heart stopped for a moment. What would they do? "Maybe it does," the first man growled, turning back to face her with fury again in his eyes. Lila held her breath, feeling the world teeter on the edge of chaos once more. Would this standoff devolve into violence? Could she maneuver this tempest? "Get ready," she whispered to herself, the stakes rising higher than ever. What awaited her next? Would the CEO stand beside her, or would it all come crashing down? The tension pulsed, each heartbeat a countdown, leading them toward an uncertain future. Lila's grip tightened on the debris as she watched the CEO square off with the men. The woman's presence was commanding, yet Lila could feel the crackle of danger in the air. No one moved. The spectators held their breath, straining to see if this moment would turn into a scene of horror or something unexpected. "Listen," the CEO said, her voice calm yet layered with authority. "We can find another way. Violence won't help. Just tell us what you want." The first man edged closer, fists flexing, his nostrils flaring with rage. "We want what's ours," he barked, eyes darting between Lila and the CEO, as if weighing the consequences of his next move. "The world owes us." "What do you mean by that?" Lila shot back, emboldened by the CEO's presence. She needed to verbalize her strength now, to knit the thread of courage that connected them all. He laughed, a chilling sound that sent shivers down her spine. "You won't understand. Look around you, princess. This glitzy world doesn't care about people like us. We're done playing nice." Behind him, the second man remained still, his eyes locked on the crowd, monitoring any attempts to escape or call for help. Lila could see the flickering fear in the eyes of those around her. A few worried faces cringed, realizing the depth of danger lurking there. "Don't you see?" the CEO urged, stepping forward. "You're only making it worse. You're scaring innocent people. Is this what you really want?" For a moment, a flicker of doubt crept across the first man's face. Lila seized the moment, stepping closer, raising her makeshift shield as a symbol of resolve. "You're right," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos swirling within her. "You're angry at this world, but hurting others is not the solution. We can fight for what's right without destruction." He faltered. Anger warred with confusion, and that shift in energy made Lila's heart race. The air around them crackled with uncertainty, a distinct shift that made her believe there was a shred of hope. But just as she thought she might be reaching him, the second man cut in, his voice a low rumble. "Stop wasting time. Let's just finish this." He took a step forward, attitude shifting like quicksand beneath their feet. The tension snapped back, razor-sharp instinct kicked in, and Lila took a defensive stance, positioning herself in front of the CEO, unwilling to let either man hurt her or the people behind her. "Stay back," she yelled, panic threading through her voice. The world seemed to become a blur of colors and sounds, every heartbeat echoing like thunder. Footsteps shuffling, whispers of the crowd fading into silence. Suddenly, the first man lunged. Lila held her breath, each second stretching into eternity as she prepared for impact. But the CEO shifted, finding her own strength, and spoke with raw conviction. "Look at us. I know you can find a better way." An explosion of sound followed as a child shrieked from the back, tears streaming down a small face, electrifying the moment. The sound pierced through the thick air, snipping at the threads of silence constructing this twisted standoff. Lila glanced back at the child, heart-wrenching at the sight. The echoes of innocence seemed to awaken something within the man. For a fragment of a moment, neither man moved, but the air thickened once more with impending chaos. Would their emotions break through the darkness that consumed them? Was there still a possibility for peace amidst the brewing storm of rage and resentment? As Lila held her ground, a sense of urgency burned within her. The world felt on the precipice, and what would happen next would affect them all. What could possibly tip the balance? The second man's impatience clawed at the edges of the scene, danger tightening like a noose. The crowd teetered on the verge, waiting for the inevitable, each moment stretching longer than the last. Lila could feel that this was only the beginning. She locked eyes with the first man, searching for a flicker of humanity. Would she be able to reach him before it all unraveled? The first man's breath came in heavy bursts, his anger leaking into uncertainty. Lila stayed firm, heart racing, her voice trembling but unwavering. "You don't have to do this," she insisted, willing him to reconsider, to see the innocent people behind her, their eyes wide with fear, praying for safety. The CEO's gaze shifted to the boy still crying in the back of the crowd. "Look at his face," she exclaimed, gesturing toward the child. "You're fighting against this world, but you're scaring the very future you claim to care about." The first man hesitated, grinding his teeth. He glanced back, conflict flickering through his features. But the second man scoffed, like a dog snapping at its leash. "You think this little kid's gonna change anything? We don't stand a chance unless we take it by force." A surge of adrenaline pulsed through Lila's veins. How could she appeal to these lost souls? The first man's vulnerability tugged at something deep within her, but the second was relentless, his eyes wild with determination. "I know what it's like to feel invisible," Lila cried, the words flying out before she could catch them. "I grew up in a world that turned its back on me. But I found a way to stand up, to succeed without violence." His brows furrowed, a flicker of doubt racing across his hardened features. Lila took a slow step forward, her makeshift shield lowering slightly. "We need change, yes. But it can't come from darkness. It has to come from understanding, from working together." At that, the first man's fists began to clench and unclench. The moment felt suspended, like time was waiting for a decision. Lila's heart thudded in her chest, hope flickering like a flame. Maybe, just maybe, she could reach him, but before she could process the change, the second man erupted, a beast unleashed. "Enough of this crap," he bellowed. "They'll never listen to you. They'll bury us in their wealth. Do you want to fight, or do you want to die?" His voice cut through the frail hope like a blade. Lila realized then the fine line they were all dancing on, how fragile this moment could be. Sweat beaded on her forehead. The tension crackled like an electric storm, threatening to unleash its fury. "Together!" she shouted, words spilling from her as desperation clawed at her throat. "We can rise together. You don't have to choose violence." The first man's face twisted as he wrestled with his thoughts, unease growing beneath his skin. Lila saw it, felt it. The struggle inside him swelled like a wave, ready to crash or recede, but the second man lunged toward Lila, his face a mask of rage. It was happening too fast. Panic surged inside her, a primal instinct to protect her own. Before she could react, the CEO stepped forward, confidence radiating from her. "Stand down," she commanded, her presence like a shield. "This isn't the way. We're stronger together, use that strength to build, not destroy." Lila held her breath, hope mingling with dread. What was going to happen next? The first man, tied in his turmoil, began to shake. Lila kept her eyes locked on him, searching for a sign. Would he succumb to anger, or could he see the path they all needed to tread? And then, all at once, there was a loud bang. Gunfire resonated in the air, shocking the crowd into a frozen stillness. Hearts stopped. Faces twisted in horror. Lila felt the heat of chaos envelop her as people started screaming, scattering like leaves in a storm. "What was that?" A voice shrieked from the back of the crowd, the confusion rippling through like an electric shock as everyone realized the danger had escalated. In that chaos, Lila's thoughts raced. The first man's dilemma, the child's pleas, the CEO's bravery all spiraled into the overarching question: had they just lost the opportunity for peace, or was this the tipping point for something greater? "Stay with me," she yelled, gripping the first man's shoulder, trying to anchor him. "We need to decide now." But as pandemonium erupted around them, Lila knew they were running out of time. Would anger reign supreme, or could they seize the moment and turn it toward hope? As shots rang sharply against the backdrop of chaos, Lila's heart sank. What lay ahead could become a nightmare. Would she find a way to turn darkness into light, or was it all slipping away? The gunfire echoed like thunder, jolting Lila into a state of heightened awareness. Her hands clutched the first man's shoulder tightly, the warmth of his skin contrasting with the chill creeping up her spine. She glanced around, hearts pounding, as people ducked for cover, some desperate to escape the impending violence. The CEO shouted again, her voice fiercely cutting through the din. "We must hold. You cannot let fear drive you to madness." But chaos fed on chaos. Lila felt the first man's muscles tense, a trembling teetering between fight and flight. She locked eyes with him, willing him to stay grounded. "You can't let them win," she pleaded, her voice breaking, raw desperation fueling every syllable. "Not here. Not now." He hesitated, uncertainty etched across his face. But the second man, caught in the chaos of his own resolve, raged louder, inciting panic. "They'll silence us. They're afraid of our power. Stop!" Lila cried, her heart racing faster than the bullets. This was not a moment for violence. Hope and fear mingled in the air, taut like a bowstring pulled back. "You don't have to lose everything." In that moment, time stretched. The decision hung in the balance. She could almost hear the collective breath of the crowd suspended disbelief. But just as clarity flickered, chaos erupted again. This time, from the shadows, out of nowhere, a figure emerged, cloaked in black, moving swiftly yet deliberately. A second shot broke the tension, a stark contrast to the first this time, aimed not at the crowd but at the first man. He fell back, shock unfolding like a warped dream on his face. "No!" Lila screamed, her voice cutting through the horror as she darted forward, instinct taking over. She grasped the edge of his jacket, dragging him backward as the crowd unleashed desperate cries, a frantic stampede of bodies surging away from the fray, but the shooter was already moving, firing again, the sound mixing with panicked screams. Lila's breath caught in her throat, each pulse of her racing heart mixing with the roar of fear that filled the area. "Get down!" she yelled, realizing the danger wasn't just in front of her, it was everywhere. As the first man hit the ground, time resumed its cruel flow. The CEO dove to shield the child, arms outstretched, a human barricade in a moment of chaos. Every second felt like an eternity, tension thick enough to slice. "Help him!" Lila shouted to anyone who could hear. But the crowd was a whirlpool of fear and confusion. Rising screams echoed in her head, clawing at her sanity. "We're better than this." Another bullet rang out, and fear escalated further, igniting the flame of her resolve. "We need unity against this madness." Lila shouted, scrambling to her feet, determination washing over her like a tidal wave. She scanned the chaos, searching for a way to turn the tide of violence into a force for stability. Then she saw it, the crowd had begun to respond. Faces turned toward her, the same fear mixing with defiance. "Stand together," she implored, raising her hands. "This isn't who we are. We are stronger united." Just as a flicker of hope sparked, the second man re-emerged, eyes wild with frenzy, desperation morphing to ferocity. "You think you can talk this away? They will take everything," he shouted. An icy fear gripped Lila's chest, then, like a thunderstorm, it erupted, shouts and arguments exchanged, voices clamoring for solutions, drowning out clarity. In the chaos, the figure in black moved again, aiming at someone in the crowd. Lila's heart raced. "No!" she yelled, lunging forward. But was it too late? Everything shifted in a heartbeat, the world collapsing into a moment of profound uncertainty. Would they find a way to unite and heal, or was this the beginning of their end? The air crackled, tension thickening as shadows loomed larger and more foreboding, the end of their struggle buried in a murky future. What would they choose now? Lila's shriek cut through the chaos, reverberating like a desperate prayer. She lunged, adrenaline fueling her every movement. The crowd surged, fear a rippling tide, but she remained focused on the cloaked figure. "Stop!" she screamed again, her voice rising, a beacon in the darkness. Each beat of her heart thrummed louder, drowning out the panic around her. She could see it now, the faint glint of a weapon, the gloved hand steady and purposeful. Time slowed. The world around her blurred as instincts kicked in. She could feel her feet pounding the ground beneath her, a primal urge to protect, to shield. Every face she passed was a mirror of terror, eyes wide and reflective, momentarily catching her gaze before darting away. She couldn't lose them now. As she closed the distance, the figure turned, caught off guard by her approach. Lila felt her chest tighten, determination igniting a furious warmth within her. "You don't have to do this," she shouted, desperate to reach whatever humanity remained in that masked presence, but the figure merely laughed, a sound laced with bitterness, echoing in the tumult. "What do you know of power? You have nothing." That hit hard. But for Lila, it was a call to arms. "I have my voice," she cried back, her defiance rising. "I have all of us." She threw her arm wide, embracing the crowd, a living canvas of raw emotion. The figure hesitated, if only for a heartbeat, a flicker of uncertainty, perhaps. It was enough. Lila seized the moment to rally the people around her. Each frightened face reflected back a sliver of hope, a candle of resistance. "Find your strength in each other," she shouted, her voice ringing with authority despite her trembling hands. "No more fear. We can't let this destroy us." Suddenly, two more shots rang out, sharper this time, striking the ground beside her. The crowd gasped in horror, a collective gasp that echoed like the wind howling through broken glass. Lila could feel the tension crackle like static electricity, every hair on her neck standing on end. "What do we do?" someone screamed, their voice trembling. Lila's heart raced, but she steadied herself, desperation transforming into resolve. "We move." She pointed towards the exits. "We don't let fear corner us, we fight back with our unity." As if responding to her defiance, some began to rise, inching towards the exits. They were wavering and terrified, but Lila stepped forward, pressing through the thrumming heart of the crowd. One by one, hands reached out to her, fingers interlocking. They began to join her, becoming a living wall of solidarity. The figure in black surged forward again, gun raised, smoke trailing behind them like an ominous shroud. The sight sent chills down Lila's spine, but she remained unmoved, each heartbeat powerful with purpose. "This is our moment," she declared, rallying the crowd like a battle cry. "Let us show them our strength." The shouts of others filled the air, gaining momentum, a force fueled by shared resolve. The cloaked figure faltered, eyes darting apprehensively, feeling the unyielding wave of hope crashing against them. Lila stepped forward, a magnetic force. "You can't silence us," she cried, fervor bright in her eyes. The crowd surged with her, becoming a collective, unstoppable mass, but then, chaos erupted once more. The shooter fired wildly now, an unstable grace born of fear. Lila ducked instinctively, the danger lurking all around. The world blared with alarm screams intermingled with gunfire as bodies fell. Then she spotted a flash of movement from the edge of her vision. A woman somewhere in the crowd was reaching toward her, holding something glimmering. "Lila! Look out!" The warning pierced through the din like a life raft thrown into stormy seas. Her blood ran cold as the unnerving realization struck her. The game wasn't nearly over. The stakes were rising, lives hanging by a mere thread. What darkness awaited them now? Would they come together or be torn apart? With fear pulsing in every heartbeat, Lila braced herself for the unknown. What could possibly happen next? Lila's instincts kicked in, snapping her into heightened alertness. The glimmering object the woman was holding, something sharp, something dangerous. The sharp edges caught the fading light, slicing through the turmoil like a devastating truth. "Get down!" Lila screamed, but the warning was lost among the chaos. The cloaked figure's face twisted in rage. Another shot rang out, echoing in a frenzied circle, and Lila ducked, her heart pounding in her chest. It was like a nightmare unfurling in slow motion, flashes of faces, screams muted, the smell of gunpowder hanging heavy in the air. The crowd surged, a frightened herd pressed against each other, and Lila felt her chest tightening as bodies jostled around her. She grasped for anyone nearby, a lifeline in the tide of fear. "Focus!" she shouted, doing her best to maintain a grip on the hope she had ignited. But even she could feel the fracture lines begin to show. The murmuring panic threaded sour notes through the once unified voices. "What are we supposed to do?" a man cried out, desperation cracking his voice. "Follow me." Lila urged, trying to sound stronger than she felt. It wasn't just about self-preservation anymore, it was about safeguarding each soul around her. She fumbled to stay grounded, driving her way toward the source of the danger, towards the cloaked figure. But they weren't backing down. The figure's eyes glinted cruelly, a stark reminder of the danger they all faced. With a sweep of that gloved hand, they aimed again. The weapon's barrel pointed straight toward Lila, and every muscle in her body screamed for her to retreat. Suddenly, the woman on the periphery shouted, "No! Not her!" She lunged forward with the glimmering object in hand, a blade glinting ominously like a fallen star. Lila glimpsed leather, a crumpled sleeve. Was she friend or foe? The distance between the woman and Lila vanished in an instant. Everything hinged on that moment as bullets continued to puncture the air with the crack of despair. "Lila!" It was the woman's voice. "Trust me." Instinct kicked in. "What are you doing?" Lila yelled, a mixture of fear and frustration bubbling in her chest. "Just stay back." With a fierce determination, the woman dashed toward the cloaked figure. That knife, was it really a knife? Held high. The blade shimmered unnaturally, a flash of hope or reckless endangerment. Time stretched and collapsed like a rubber band pulled too tight. The figure hesitated too long, unfurling a wicked laugh, when suddenly crack. The blade sunk deep, meeting its mark, or so it seemed. Lila's heart stuttered. Could that be it? The pandemonium shifted. But the cloaked figure only stumbled, too quickly recovering their stance, eyes burning with vengeance. Lila felt fear coiling like a serpent around her throat. The woman had intended to save them, but was she now putting them all in greater danger? "Run!" Lila shouted again, spurred by instinct. Now! Chaos erupted once more, screams layering over one another like a morbid symphony. The crowd was moving a frantic dance of limbs, desperate and jolted. Suddenly, a massive shape collided with Lila, knocking her off her feet. As reality spun around her clouded mind, Lila caught a glimpse of the woman's face, eyes wide with a mix of fury and fear before it vanished into the throng. Was she hurt? Was she gone? A voice cried out on the other side of the mess. "We can't let them win." It was Lila's voice rising, pleading, rallying. "Together, we fight." The world felt both slow and quick. Bodies were moving, but shadows were still looming like dark clouds gathering. As Lila climbed back to her feet, brushing off dirt and fear, she could feel the tremors of doubt creeping back in. They were running, but were they running toward safety or toward their fate? And then, the cloaked figure stepped forward again, gun raised, with an unwavering gaze. "Who dares challenge me? You think you can stand against power?" With a collective breath, the crowd turned toward Lila, eyes filled with question and anticipation. Would her voice be enough? Could they unite this time? Lila's heart raced, unsure. One simple thought rippled through her mind. What if this was only the beginning? Lila's breath hitched at the sight of the figure, the gun glinting coldly in the fading light. The air felt thick, charged with an electric tension as the crowd wavered on the edge between fight and flight. She could see fear reflected in their eyes, but also something else, a flicker of defiance that she hoped could ignite into a blaze. "Listen!" Lila shouted, her voice cutting through the noise like a knife. "If we stand together, we can take them down. We can." Another gunshot blasted through the air, silencing her. The cloaked figure laughed, a low, dark sound that crawled up Lila's spine. "Fools! You think your unity means anything? You're all just pieces on a chessboard, and I command the game." The woman with the knife was gone, lost in the swirl of bodies and fear. Lila felt a gnawing void in her chest. Was this chaos merely a precursor to something darker? "Fight!" she shouted, her heart pounding like drums in her ears. "Don't let them tear us apart." A wave of shouting joined her, resonating through the crowd, yet the cloaked figure held their ground, unyielding, gun steady. A man to Lila's left, she didn't know his name, broke from the throng and lunged toward the figure. Lila cursed under her breath, fear washing over her. It was reckless, but it was also hope-igniting. The flame could catch the man charged, but the figure's finger twitched on the trigger. "Stop!" Lila screamed, but it was too late. A flash of fire, a deafening sound. The crowd gasped as the man crumpled to the ground. Chaos magnified, people scrambling backward in horror. The figure took a step forward, reveling in the despair they were sowing. "No!" Lila cried, rushing toward the fallen man. Heart racing, she knelt at his side, feeling the warmth pooling beneath him, the life ebbing away. "Stay with me," she urged, gripping his shoulder, looking into his eyes wide with panic. The world around her faded, the crowd's panic masking the man's wheezing breaths. "What do we do?" he gasped, a trail of crimson staining his lips. "Stay strong. We're going to get you out of here." But deep inside, she felt the tremor of uncertainty. She glanced up. The cloaked figure loomed, shadows dancing around them. "Look at them! Pathetic!" the figure shouted, mocking. "Can't even save their own. You're a joke." Each harsh word struck Lila in the gut, twisting the knife of defeat deeper. She had to ignite this fear into something mighty. "We have to fight," she shouted again, her voice fierce. Then it hit her, a plan, a seed of desperation. "Everyone, we need to distract them. Create a commotion." It was like a switch had flipped. Groups of people began throwing discarded objects, frantically looking for anything to break the focused gaze of the figure. Chaos morphed into a calculated melee as the screams rose, rippling through the throng of bodies. Lila felt a swell of solidarity. The crowd was lifting, motivated by something greater than fear. They were realizing they couldn't just run. They had to unite. "Now!" Lila yelled, instinct guiding her. Adrenaline pumped as she shuffled back toward the origin of the chaos, maneuvering through the pushing tide. "Together!" The cloaked figure faltered, eyes darting, losing control as the crowd surged. Evidently unnerved by the unforeseen defiance, the figure lost focus. "Get that weapon!" Lila yelled. "We can end this!" In an instant, she found herself at the front line, closer than she had ever imagined. Another push of the crowd and she could reach the gun, but her heart raced, terror gripping her throat. "Lila!" a voice screamed from behind. She didn't have to turn to know who it was. The woman had returned. But why now? In this moment of chaos, she was back. What had changed for her to come rushing forward again? Lila glanced back just as she saw the outline of the woman advancing with purpose, blade glinting fiercely once more. But the cloaked figure was regaining confidence, pointing the gun right at them. "Go! Now!" Lila shouted, her pulse hammering in her ears. In that frozen moment, would they finally stand together in destiny's path? The shadows loomed, they could not falter now. And then the world fractured again as the figure's finger pressed down. Was this the moment they would be obliterated, or could they claim their chance to fight back? The sound of gunfire exploded into the air, reverberating like thunder. Lila's heart raced, each beat pounding in time with adrenaline surging through her veins. She watched as the cloaked figure's face twisted with rage and fear, the gun trembling in their grasp. It was a moment that felt eternal, caught in a blur of anguish and hope. Lila couldn't let fear win. Against the backdrop of chaos, she locked eyes with the woman, the same one who had wielded the knife just moments ago. There was fire there, an unyielding spirit. "Together!" Lila yelled once more, feeling that single word ignite something in her chest. Suddenly, she spotted the small objects, the stones, debris on the ground. "Grab anything!" she shouted at the crowd, her voice a lifeline cutting through the cacophony. "Anything to distract them!" The crowd erupted into movement, hands darting, hearts racing. People rushed to scoop up the bricks, thrown fruits, anything they could find. They were done being paralyzed by fear. Together, they transformed their panic into solidarity, a collective force emerging from the wreckage of despair. "Now!" Lila commanded, as a wave of objects surged forward, arcing toward the cloaked figure. Lila pushed through the thrumming mass, leading the charge with fierce determination. The figure stumbled backward, confusion flashing across their eyes. Anger bubbled over as they regained composure, ready to retaliate. But Lila's heart screamed louder than fear. She dashed forward, the all-consuming urge to protect thrumming in her veins. She knew this was her moment, their moment. Unity! Lila shouted, now standing at the forefront of the crowd. The only way out is together. We can rise above this. The crowd began to chant her words, echoing their resolve into the volatile air. The cloaked figure's posture wavered, an uncertain flicker crossing their features. Lila felt the shift. This could be at the tipping point. We are not your enemies. She yelled, emotions churning with power. We're people. We matter just as much. To her astonishment, the crowd moved as one, shifting closer toward the figure. With every step, fear morphed into defiance. Some held out hands, others raised their voices in a chorus of strength. The boundaries between them began to dissolve like mist in sunlight. No! The figure shouted, weapon raised again, but their resolve faltered as they looked over the growing mass. Lila could see it, the creeping uncertainty that gripped the figure, finally splintering through their rage. A moment stretched, almost too fragile to breathe, but Lila stood firm. It was truth that coursed through her words, her belief that pierced through the mental armor wrapped tightly around the cloaked figure. Drop it! She shouted, standing tall. It doesn't have to be this way. Something shifted, a doubt anchored deep in the figure's gaze. They backed up, almost unwillingly. With a final desperate surge, Lila pushed further, stepping closer until they were almost within reach. This is not the answer. She cried, voice trembling but unwavering. Let us talk. Talk is a way out of this madness. The cloaked figure hesitated, confusion dancing upon their masked face, and for a moment, they lowered the weapon. Then, with a cacophony of shouts, the crowd knelt, lowering themselves in solidarity. We're not against you. Fight with us. Lila continued, the world narrowing down to this singular moment of confrontation, everyone united against darkness. An explosion resonated within that moment, a crack that shattered silence. The gun clattered to the ground, echoing louder than a thunderclap, noise turning to silence. Lila drew a deep breath, heart racing as she watched the cloaked figure collapse to their knees, the weight of years lifted. Around her, the crowd held their breath, anticipation thrumming in the air, uncertainty mixed with a fragile hope. Will you join us? Lila asked softly now, the fight ebbing but the fire within still burning bright. She had reached them, she felt it. We can change this. But we need to do it together. Their eyes met those pools of misery, transforming into something almost human. Hesitant nods followed at first, breaking the barrier, while emotions flowed like rivers, pulling the crowd into a tide of compassion. With a shaky breath, the cloaked figure lowered their head, removed the mask. A face of pain and desperation stared back into the sea of many. And in that surreal moment, through the unveiling, Lila saw fear turn to compassion. In the aftermath of turmoil, Lila took a final look at the gathering crowd, relief washing over her like the dawn breaking after a long night. They had fought together, stood as one. As newfound allies surrounded her, Lila turned to the world around them and felt a spark ignite. This was the beginning. Now we rebuild, she declared, her heart swelling with belonging. Hope flickered brighter than the darkest moments they faced together. The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices melding into one. In that second, unity soared, the embodiment of resilience, renewing their ties and calling for a revolution built on understanding. For Lila, the journey had only just begun, but for once, she felt certain that it would reshape lives, her own included. If you enjoyed this story and want more amazing narratives like this, you need to subscribe now. Hit that red button immediately so you don't miss any of our exclusive tales coming your way. And hey, smash that like button now, you know it fuels the algorithm. Join the conversation, flood the comments section with your thoughts on this journey, and share your theories about the climax. Don't wait even one more second to share this with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support makes all the difference in bringing more inspiring stories to life.